Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. While we take care of the technicalities, just a brief introduction for this roundtable. Simon is going to give a summary of the ELEXIS project. And then I'm going to provide a very brief overview of GLOBALEX. And then we will have our panel here, Bolette Pedersen from Denmark, Jelena Kallas from Estonia, Edward Finnegan from the USA, Milos Jakubicek from the Czech Republic, John Mccrae from Ireland and the UK, and Lars Trapp-Jensen from Denmark as well, and who have various involvements in ELEXIS, GLOBALEX. So just very brief statements from each one. And then we'd like you to join and make comments and questions, etc. Simon, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ilan. So those of you who were here yesterday and saw the same presentation, feel free to... The microphone? Oh, it's working now. It's working. So those who were here yesterday for the annual meeting, as I said, feel free to take out your phones and play games or check your mail, because it will be exactly the same presentations as yesterday, but it's not the same people. So for those who were not here yesterday, I will just speed through the slides again, so you can have a basic idea about this new infrastructure or project that will start soon. So one thing that has to be said, that it's a direct result of an NL cost action, which I think is a really good thing, because it says that cost actions might actually work. And as I said yesterday, there would be no ELEXIS without the NL cost action. Basic information about this: it's a project which went to an infrastructure call for starting communities. So lexicographers or lexicography was presented to European Commission as a starting community, meaning that there is no common European infrastructure for lexicography. And as I said, it will start in a few months, probably in January 2018, with 5 million euros of financing, coordinated by my institute, Jožef Stefan Institute in Ljubljana, Slovenia. As an infrastructure, we have quite a lot of partners, 17 from 15 countries, which I'll just show the picture later. What is the goal of ELEXIS? So basically to support lexicography, but not the same one as might be known from previous times, let's say. Very important thing is access to high-quality lexical data. This is the point of this infrastructure. So we should provide to everybody this kind of data, and also bridge the gap between advanced and lesser resource scholarly communities working on lexicographic resources, which means that basically the infrastructure should provide tools and applications and data for people who want to work on dictionaries. Objectives are defined as you see on the screen. So very important thing is to foster cooperation and knowledge exchange. This, well, again, if you were here yesterday, I think it's really, really important that knowledge is shared around this community. We also need common standards and solutions. We saw in NL cost action and elsewhere that this is really needed. Then we have a lot of tools for extracting structure linking, enabling access, and foster, promote open access culture, which is a bit of a problem, I think, in lexicography. So we will find ways how to do that in these next 4 years. The impact should follow basically directly from what was defined as objectives. Sorry. And well, all of this is direct quotation from the proposal. So what was said is that we will the project will result in a new type of lexicography that no longer views languages as isolated entities. This is a bit of a graphic representation of what will go on. So the thing is that we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of good lexical data here, which is not accessible to the well-supported community, which is natural language processing, computational linguistics, semantic web, artificial intelligence, very lively, I think, lately. And the point is to get the data, which is not accessible, through linked open data to that community and get back also the enhanced tools or resources which can be used then by lexicographers. In this kind of project, there are several types of activities which are financed. A lot goes into research, then a lot, networking is very, very important. And in the bottom, there is transnational access and virtual access, which means the following. Virtual access, simply explained, means that you can use data and tools which are available on the web. So virtual access means on the web. Transnational access means traveling, simply said. It means that there will be calls, there will be about 40 visits to different institutions or locations throughout Europe and elsewhere also possibly, will be financed at approximately 10 per year. As it's written here, basically to work with the data which is, well, restricted. This is the division of the finances, so half of it goes to research, quarter to networking, and quarter to the virtual and transnational access. This is basically graphical representation of the plan. On this slide, we have the infrastructures within the infrastructure, 3 of them. This one is for retro digitizing dictionaries. This one is more or less for NLP. Lex2 is for lexicographers. So if I just say a few words about each of them, the point here is to get the data know each other. And this is done through first retro digitization, then through common conversion and alignment tools, and then linking on top of that. So when this is done, this data, which knows other data, goes into a common linked, massively linked resource, which we call ELEXIS matrix dictionary, but it has something already existing in the middle, which is BabelNet. We also have Sapienza University and Roberto Navilli, who works on BabelNet in the consortium. And then with that, using that new resource with all the, let's say, lexicographic data previously not available, we can maybe get to a point where word sense disambiguation in corpora will actually work. And if you do that, then maybe you can do something like a dictionary on the fly. That's what we saw also today at the beginning, presented by Miloš Jakubicek. And the top part is dedicated to lexicography. The wrong one. That one. To lexicographers. So when we have this kind of very clever extraction, linking, so on, dictionary on the fly, we can use this data in lexicographic workflows, which can also use crowdsourcing, gamification, and new types of ideas how to make good lexical resources, and a lot of training also. Okay, this is the organization of the project. We'll go one by one. So in the middle, it's the consortium, but this is not all ELEXIS. It's just the those who will will get financed and will work on the project. But so these are the partners, so from 13 EU countries and from Serbia and Israel. Let's not stay here. This is the look of the consortium on the map. You can see if you find your country. I will not go through them. We can talk about it later. This is the important part, I think. This is the message here. There are 3 target groups. One is professional large-scale lexicography. This is what we defined. Professional small-scale lexicography, spontaneous, and small-scale lexicography. What does that mean? Professional large-scale lexicography means language institutes, standardization bodies, somebody in your country, in your language, who is dedicated to creating language resources, and also industry, publishing houses. Then we have professional small-scale lexicography, which is individual researchers and people teaching at the universities and students, other professionals, language professionals, terminologists, and so on, but individual people, basically. Then we have spontaneous and small-scale lexicography. These are not professionals. So these are only the people who want to, let's say, create a dictionary for their hardly existing language or dialect or anything. So we help them too. Then we have in this, so in this, let's say, light blue circle, we also have observers, meaning, at the moment it's intended that observers are language institutes, or, the big ones, and they will be also invited to become observers, which means that these institutions will have access to all tools developed. In the development phase also, they will be able to participate before everything is done. So there is the green part on the top. We will not stay in Europe only, but extend to global organizations, lexicographic associations, and also other bodies, through what will be explained later by Ilan. And then we have institutions distributing data, and so on and so on. We'll have an international advisory board who will advise us on various matters. There are lexicographers, NLP people, AI people from various parts of the project. And the last thing is down here, very important one, Clarin and Deraya. These are 2 already existing European infrastructures for, let's say, language resources and digital humanities on the other side. And what is already there will be used by ELEXIS. So we will not devise something that is already created by Clarin, like federated identity, content search, service chaining, stuff like that. And, this is also something to think about, maybe also in the round table. What happens when the project is finished after 4 years? Let's say that we created a nice thing, and as things go, they can also disappear. And this has to be thought about. Infrastructure is basically community. So if the community will be active, I think that's where ELEXIS will continue after 4 years. That's my quick presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. A few words now, we move to GLOBALEX. GLOBALEX is celebrating 2 years. Actually, it came live exactly 2 years ago at eLex conference at the UK, at Herstmonceux Castle, where several of us met to discuss that. The idea is to simply develop some kind of an umbrella constellation, not another association, etc., but some framework for cooperation around the world among different associations of lexicography and others. To begin with, it is the continental associations that are driving GLOBALEX. Simon and I have been active in the beginning, submitting a proposal to ELREC for a workshop which took place last year. Lars and Istok were working actively with us on that, and we had an organizing board with a representative of each of the continental associations from AfriLex, AsiaLex, AustraleX, DSNA, and EURALEX. DSNA is the Dictionary Society of North America. They are not dealing with lexicography there, you see. And representatives of eLex, which is not an association, and we still need to work out the things there. So we had a fairly successful workshop. We had 24 submissions, and we accepted the maximum that we could, that was 16, 2 out of 3. They were very good quality, and it was very successful. We have just submitted a proposal for a second workshop, but I will come back to that in a minute. Before that, we have continued with activity. We registered a website, globalex.link. We managed to obtain some rare agreement among the different associations. Each one provides $20 a year in order to run the website, the hosting. So actually putting their money where their mouth is, which is good. And we have established what we call a preparatory board with a representative from each association. Representatives of non-association eLex, Simon and Istok, Lars from EURALEX, Ed Finnegan, DSNA, myself from AsiaLex, plus Danny Prinsloo from AfriLex, and Julia Miller from AustraleX. So we have been meeting for the last year on Skype about once a month, and talking a lot, and making plans about things. It's been mostly developing ideas for publications, sharing publications of proceedings and others on the website. We still have about a year to go with this preparatory board until we see how the things can continue. So far, so good. We have just submitted a proposal to ELREC for the second GLOBALEX workshop for the conference that will be held next year in May in Japan, the first time that ELREC is moving outside of Europe. And this time we are doing it in cooperation with the Global WordNet Association. So there are 2 persons representing them, that is Francis Bond and Louis Morgado da Silva, both of them from University in Singapore, Nanyang Technological University. They are running a Global WordNet conference next February. And that is the special topic for the next GLOBALEX workshop, is lexicography and WordNets. We will try to deal with that. We will be, of course, looking at all other relevant topics. In general, the idea is the relationship between lexicography and computational linguistics. The organizing committee includes representatives of the different associations. The scientific committee includes various people, included last time. Many of you were present there. Thank you very much for helping with reviewing, etc. So basically, this is just current status of GLOBALEX, with the idea of promoting the cooperation on lexicography around the world. So maybe we can move on for each of you to say a few words. And we can begin with you, Bolette, and go down the table.
Is this working? Yeah. Okay, I will mainly comment on the ELEXIS project. And I'm Bolette Sanford Petersen from the University of Copenhagen. I'm a researcher in language technology at the Center for Language Technology there. And most specifically, I've been working for many years with lexical resources for natural language processing. How to make existing dictionaries practically useful in language technology. And I got acquainted with the idea of ELEXIS 1.5 years ago, and I got very excited about it and really wanted to join the group. I think the idea of establishing a formal infrastructure among the lexicographical communities in Europe and combine it with a number of language technology researchers and developers was really a great idea and really long called for. Because as it was also said yesterday, the discussion at the annual cost action meeting yesterday, good data really beats a lot of data. So I think if this could be one of the goals of the ELEXIS project to actually demonstrate that this is true to the technology engineering communities, then we would already have come a long way. We're all quite aware that in a few years, intelligent technology will really change our working life and also maybe our personal lives, daily lives. And actually cracking the language barrier here, also at a semantic level, so to speak, will become even more important than what we see today, I'm sure. So I think the ELEXIS idea is very ambitious because it doesn't only look at interlinking lemma lists and morphology and so on, but actually also goes into the content part of the lexicon, which I believe is really the black gold for language technology. So in one of the research packages, we will look into the nature of sense inventories, sense definitions, how can we cluster senses semi-automatically for language technology use and so forth. And we will not only work monolingually, but also multilingually. And we will include in our examinations also predominance information, frequency information on senses, because that's something which is very much called for if we want to use it in language technology. Which are the senses actually in use? So I'm very enthusiastic about going into this field in such a big community. And last but not least, I'm quite aware that a lot of this information is not really accessible for all our languages yet. We don't know for all languages which are the frequent senses and which are the less frequent senses. So of course that's the first issue to tackle, how to actually obtain this information. But there are emerging tools, as we have heard today and yesterday, in this field. So I'm quite optimistic that we can achieve this. And then this brings me to the last thing I'd like to mention. I also brought it up this morning at Frida's talk about the BLARC. I think if we in ELEXIS or in this community could help form a new basic language toolkit, help define the requirements that are needed, at least from the lexical point of view, then I believe we've come a long way, because it's really too old, the BLARC that was made for maybe 10, 15 years ago. Technology has changed so much that we really need to redefine it, and I think this is the group where we could do that.
Thank you. So I'm Ilan. I work in the Institute of the Estonian Language, Tallinn, Dictionary Department, and Computer Lexicographer. I would comment mostly on GLOBALEX. And what I would like to say is that I see that GLOBALEX has like great potential for changing our field, lexicography, like in a more interdisciplinary context, putting our lexicography into more interdisciplinary context, especially through organizing different kind of workshops. And the focus could be on NLP, lexicography NLP. This is clear. Computer-assisted language learning. This is also one field which is really, we have so many in common, but when you go, for example, to workshops, NLP and CALL, computer-assisted language learning, it seems that people who are dealing with computer-assisted language learning, they are not aware of lexicographical resources at all. They even don't think that they can use our data for producing their own language learning materials and so on. So there's a gap. Translation studies, computational linguistics also, like Ilan said. But there are also such kind of fields that we, at the moment, we even don't think that we might, lexicographers might work on this also. Like, for example, text and data mining. This is web mining. This is just one example. So in between of lexicographers, we do talk a lot about automated lexicography, corpus lexicography, we just compile dictionaries automatically. But what really we face the problem is that we lack corpora. For example, in terms of Estonian, we lack fiction corpora. It's a very serious problem. We are doing good only with web corpora, and it is because of sketch engine tools, so that they help us to crawl the web, and so we have materials. At least we know what kind of Estonian is used on the web. And this text and data mining, let's say. And in Estonia, for example, now we have a unique law, and it's called Legal Deposit Copy Act. What actually it means that together with each new print publication, our national library is going to receive a digital data set. So what we meet with librarians now, and we do think how to collaborate with them, and they ask what lexicographers need, how can we help, and we say how we can help. So this is one initiative that could be somehow also regulated or discussed on the level of GLOBALEX, because those are problems which are really global, you know. They are not language specific. So looking forward for for the years of GLOBALEX and collaboration of GLOBALEX people with eLexis community.
I'm Ed Finnegan, Professor Emeritus at the University of Southern California, and the editor of the DSNA's journal, which is called, as Ilan has poked a little fun at, dictionaries. The DSNA is the oldest of all of the national or continental associations, started actually in the mid-70s. And so the name dictionaries was totally appropriate, and we are the only non-lex of the associations, with EUROLEX and AsiaLex and AustraLex and AfroLex. The DSNA stands out, and its history, I think, explains that. I am trained as a linguist and have done work in corpus linguistics, which is the most close of my interests to what goes on in lexicography until quite recently. I have had an interest in certain aspects of lexicography going back 40 or 50 years even. But I was quite surprised when about 5 years ago, the Dictionary Society asked me to become editor of the journal. And the first thing that came to mind was a New Yorker cartoon. The New Yorker is quite an extraordinary magazine that some of you may be familiar with, and it published a cover quite a long time ago from a New Yorker's perspective. I happen to be originally a New Yorker. And the first, the cover is a full-page cover in which New York City takes up about 90% of the page, and the rest of the United States takes up the other 10%. And that is to represent a New Yorker's perspective. And I realized when I was asked then to become editor of the journal that I knew almost nothing about what was going on in European lexicography, and set out immediately to the eLex conference that was held in Tallinn. And it was, as I fully expected, eye-opening and quite exciting. And from that then eventually came my involvement then with GLOBALEX and representing DSNA. in the GLOBALEX constellation, which is Ilan's word. One of the great things about a constellation is that, as with the constellations, Orion, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, and so on, we can name the constellations, whereas we may not know the names of the stars. And I think that that's probably true, at least, of American lexicography, that we know too little about the riches of what's been going on in European lexicography. And GLOBALEX gives us a way then of sharing information. As Ilan mentioned, we have been meeting as a group monthly by Skype. So that entails getting together people at the same hour of the day or night, the early morning sometimes, or the late night, from Australia right across the globe. And already what we've learned is a good deal about what's taking place in one another's organizations. And with the website now up and with a great tribute very, very much to Simon, we have a website now through which the constellation, the stars in the constellation, these various organizations can begin to share information. So the kinds of information that is available in some cases through other channels, let's say through indexing services, we now hope to be able to put on the website. So tables of content, for example, of the various journals, announcements of conferences, newsletters, or at least links to newsletters, so that we can begin to find out what's going on in the other organizations, and also what opportunities exist to meet one another face-to-face or through modern technologies, Skype being one obvious one. And I think that, so GLOBALEX, from this American point of view, has provided an opportunity for Americans who are lexicographers or interested in lexicography to see what's going on in the lexicographical world and to step a bit beyond our dictionary world. And I think it's been productive. Just to give you a very small example, it so happens that the ELEX meeting took place on exactly the same days this year as the DSNA meeting. So the ELEX people were meeting in Guangzhou, China, and the DSNA people, for the first time outside North America, were meeting in Barbados. Some of us had gone mostly to swim in the warm sea, but there were a great many good papers given. We played a greeting which had been pre-recorded from the president of ELEX, who's sitting to my far right, at that conference. And at the ELEX conference then, DSNA had sent a message from our president. And what we're hoping to do with that is to attach faces to names, and in that way to bring about the kind of cooperation that we think will be very helpful to all the organizations.
Thank you. I'm Miloš Jakubček from Lexical Computing. I will say a few words first about ELEXIS, and then I think I will also get to GLOBALEX. So first of all, our role in ELEXIS quite obviously is closely related to Sketch Engine. We will be involved in lots of the activities within ELEXIS, but I guess the news that you are most looking for is that Sketch Engine will be a part of the ELEXIS infrastructure and provided for the time being of the project for free for research purposes overall over the European Union, which I guess is some good news for all of us. Then second, when I was thinking now what I actually should say about ELEXIS, then I was thinking of all the European projects that I was involved so far, and I mean lots of them, despite I think that the money was spent on useful things, weren't really top in terms of the goals and research achieved. Now I think ELEXIS will be different. Why I think that? I think because a lot of people that are involved want things to happen. I think it's also thanks to the fact that inside of ELEXIS there are bullies like Simon who managed to turn the 10% chance of getting the funding into the fact that we got it, and Ilan who, and here I'm getting to GLOBALEX, managed to start something like GLOBALEX. By the way, I was there at eLex 2015 and I remember when it all started. I remember your first sentence about GLOBALEX to me when you basically greeted me on the first day, and you said, by the way, Miloš, I'm beginning to think we should start something like GLOBALEX. And we were the local organizers. It was quite a hectic day, so I think all that I did was like a loud sighing and saying, oh yes. And I think it was not only me who at the beginning wasn't really keen on starting something like a new bureaucracy and so on. But as I said, that he's another bully, and he was kind of pushing and pushing, and at a day he grabbed all of us at 10 o'clock in the evening with a couple of wine bottles into a dark room at the top of the castle. And he didn't let us out until he convinced all of us that it's an idea worth trying. Year after, I was for the first time at ELEX, and it probably was the same eye-opening event to me like eLex might have been to Ed. And since then, I think certainly GLOBALEX makes sense. It makes sense because there is lots of that we can share, and there is lots of that we can contribute to each other. On one hand, it's probably true that the North American and European lexicography is sort of the pioneering one among the associations for all kinds of reasons, economic ones, for instance. But on the other hand, there is also lots of that we can really learn also in terms of research and linguistics from the other parts of the world, basically. And in the end, I think that the community is not so big that it should close itself within the geographic borders of the regions. So I think that's it from my point. Thanks.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm John Mccrae. I'm from the Insight Centre for Data Analytics at the National University of Ireland, Galway. And I'm something of a comparative newbie, or maybe a bit out of the field here. This is actually only my second eLex. What I've been working on for the last few years is this idea of linguistic linked open data. So this is something where we've been trying to encourage people to make their data more open and to link it. And actually, unfortunately, I missed the GLOBALEX workshop at ELEX because we had our own workshop that was competing. So this is a linked data and linguistics workshop, which we also hope will be at ELEX next year. But I'm here principally because I'm leading one of the work packages in ELEXIS. So this will be obviously the linked open data work package, which will try to realize this idea of a matrix dictionary that Simon presented. And the idea of this is that we would really like to create a kind of a central portal, a central resource where we can bring in all this lexicography, all these different dictionaries together, and allow you to access between them. And we also want to do this in a way that is a bit perhaps better than has been done before, particularly, for example, in resources such as BabelNet, we've taken the data and we've just stuck it into our resource, and maybe there's a note at the bottom saying where we've got it from. So we really want to try to make sure that this data remains fully attributed and that we can have links back to your websites, and that we try to actually direct the users from our matrix dictionary to your data. And then we'll also provide services that will help you to make your dictionaries better. So we kind of hope that by you contributing your dictionaries, you make our project successful, and we also make your dictionaries continue to become better.
I'm Lars Trapp Jensen from the Society for Danish Language and Literature in Copenhagen. My institution is also a part of the ELEXIS consortium. And apart from that, as Ilan said, I'm also in this context representing ELEX as a part of the GLOBALEX working group. So I'll say a bit of both. in this context. And if there's one word that combines ELEXIS and GLOBALEX, it's the word globalization. I see both initiatives as logic and welcome initiatives and responses to the global nature of our field through the development of technology with all the challenges and opportunities that come with it. Globalization means that dictionaries and other lexical resources should not continue to exist in isolation. Digital data are by their nature very easy to send, to duplicate, to export and import, that is to exchanged, and we should take advantage of that instead of reinventing the wheel every time and start from scratch when we launch a new project. And that's why formats and standards are so important. Exchanging data allows us to be cost efficient and gain from the work of our colleagues. The price for this huge advantage is that we cannot develop our own formats in isolation, suited for our own project, irrespective of what other people do. So we need to cooperate and agree on basic formats for metadata and document structure in order to make the data understandable to the stupid computers that are going to process the data. I think this message has sunken in even to people like myself. I'm not technically skilled, but through other EU infrastructures, like we've heard about Clarin and Daria, have told us this is inevitable. And with ELEXIS, we're lucky to be able to develop an infrastructure for lexicography. I think this is a very fortunate situation that we're in, and I look forward to following how the project evolves. As for GLOBALEX, the situation is slightly different. I see this more like an organizational or perhaps even a political initiative. It came about as a simple realization that there are there's much more in common than separates lexicography and lexicographers wherever they're based and no matter what languages they're working with. We all face the same challenges and could and should benefit from each other's work on a personal and professional level. Yesterday, Ilan mentioned how pleasantly surprised he was to find out, coming from the ENEL meeting, all the new faces that were there and also interested in lexicography. And I'm sure this could be taken even further. When I go to conferences and meetings, I don't meet a lot of people from, say, Albania or Bhutan or Gambia, but don't tell me that there are no lexicographers going around there, no lexicography taking place in those areas. It's just a fact that many of our colleagues out there are not able to get funding to go to conferences, the ones that I go to. And that's a pity. But if they cannot come to us, we can reach out to them and through various technical solutions offer them the second best to be able to participate virtually. The eLex conference here has been exemplary in this respect, having video record presentations that I think at all previous conferences, maybe perhaps with the exception of the one in Louvain. Did you have video recordings? No. Perhaps not, but from Tallinn onwards at least, that has been the case. It cost a bit extra, that's true, but very little compared to the gain that it brings. Everyone with a computer and an internet connection can follow it. I think that's fantastic and something that we should do much more. So therefore I think GLOBALEX is most welcome as a framework and an umbrella organization that brings together all the existing continental associations and facilitates cooperation, conference participation, access to papers and presentations from its website, as we've seen, available to everyone wherever on the planet they are. So that's a huge accomplishment, I think.
Thank you, all of you. You have taken a lot of time, but there's a lot to say. The idea was that we speak until 6 o'clock and then There's a lot of you here, so it would be great if each and every one said something, but I know that is not going to happen. But I would also like to mention in particular the support from the beginning from Annette Dijkstra, who was then editor of the International Journal of Lexicography, and the current editor, Robert Leff, and Tanneke Schunheim from this institute in GLOBALEX. And I'd like to open the floor for the time that's remaining before everyone's rushing for drinks and all that. So, Simon, would you like to continue?
No, I would like the audience to continue.
Okay. Dear audience, please continue. How does it sound to you? What would you like to say, ask, suggest?
Yes, it's today it was my second presentation of ELEXIS, and when I'm thinking about it, I think one of the main targets that should be done during within the project is the raise of the awareness of tools that do exist and the awareness of resources that do exist. I have met several groups of people starting a project on lexicography, and the very first they started to do to program a corpus manager. It's completely stupid thing, yes, because free corpus managers do exist, and when they start doing the same from scratch, I can't believe it will be better. And if they do have some programming capacity, they should put it into improving the part of speech together for the target language and things like that. And I think many times they even do not know that something like that exists. So the awareness of tools that do exist should be one of the tasks of the ELEXIS project.
Yeah, well, dissemination is one of the very, very important part of the infrastructure, so the answer is yes. Anybody else would like to comment or ask something? Michael.
I'd like to just maybe remind everyone of one thing that keeps going through my mind when I listen to Simon and other people talk about ELEXIS. It seems that ELEXIS is configured to be a project which kind of revolves around a virtuous circle between NLP and lexicography, so that lexicographers consume the outputs of NLP, and then they produce data which is then used again as fodder for NLP applications. And that's awesome, that's great. But I'd like to remind everyone that NLP applications are not the only consumer of lexicographical data, and humans are the other very important consumer of lexicographical data. And there's a lot that technology can still do in improving the experience that humans have when using computers. For example, making lexicographical data more usefully present in situations when people actually need them, which is when people are writing and reading, and also improving the experience people have when using multiple dictionaries at the same time, which is a topic which is particularly sort of dear to me. So I would like ELEXIS to not forget about the human consumers and about the fact that dictionaries are written for people. And then the dictionaries that are written for people are slightly different from the types of lexical data that is intended for NLP applications. Okay, that's the end of my rant. Thank you.
I just wanted to start with, did we say anything about users in the proposal, Simon? I mean, obviously, right? I think we all agree on that. And that's why also factors like dissemination are so important there. And there is a special subpart which is focusing on gamification and these kinds of things. So this, I mean, it shouldn't be, on one hand, yes, what you said is right, and research-wise, the circle between NLP and lexicography is sort of the backbone of ELEXIS. On the other hand, it shouldn't make really the view that that users are somewhere, you know, they are some byproduct of it. No, no.
Yeah, well, maybe I can just add one sentence. When Horizon 2020 started, I was attending a meeting in Brussels, and some of the officers there said, well, you know, in this case, NLP community, you are now the servants of industry. So, you know, forget about financing you directly. We will finance you only if you are good for some industrial purpose. In ELEXIS, I have to say that NLP are the servants of lexicographers and human users. That's the point here. I mean, that's clear also from the proposal, but maybe it was not so clear from my presentation. Any other questions? No? Then, Ilan.
Rather than questions, I would invite comments. And I think this human aspect it's kind of obvious in a way, but it's very good to have it repeated. I was talking earlier today about the datatization process of making our lexicographical resources more useful for machines in order to serve human beings. But this human thing is also part of, for example, a meeting like this. And maybe since there is silence here and we're going to finish and everyone's dying for a drink, actually going from ELEXIS to GLOBALEX, it depends on you. It's on each and every one of us. Sort of, some of us might take initiatives and volunteer to do some work, etc. But in the end, in the beginning, it depends on each of us actually participating, contributing, sharing, shouting when it hurts, and appreciating what's going on. So anyway, thanks a lot for your participation, and enjoy the evening here.